How you guys doing? How you guys doing? We're gonna be doing some wire wheeling and stuff. I'm gonna be forging because it's late and my grandmother and neighbors, but we can work on some doing the wire wheeling. Yeah, it's a little jacket. More of a jacket than a shirt, but so yeah, no, I got everything still very much disorganized, but kind of have this cable set up so that I can. I normally would have streamed forging today, this Sunday, but my schedule changed at work, so I'll at least have all of Wednesday off. That'll be good, and I'm not doing the double anymore because 16 hours does just kind of wear on you. Let me see if you guys can see stuff to not be too bored out of your mind. Actually, I'm going to flip you guys around. It's going to be the crappier camera. But you'll... That's why tripods are kind of annoying, because... Oh, to save space, because my garage, luckily... It's not my garage, it's my family, my grandmother's. But the one of the ways you can save space, this was a mounting bracket from it was a grinder that had a pedestal, but the grinder motor was crappy. So I was able to screw this to here, and then we were able to screw this to the wall. The only issue is you have to make sure that you have the cable away, because my dad was using this one time, and it wrapped around this thing and kind of tore it up a little, so we got electrical tape on the wire. But we got the wire wheel. So sometimes when you forge stuff, you'll have some forge scale, and you want to kind of polish it up a little bit, so that way when you heat it back up and you put your wax or oil finish on it, it'll bake on and it'll darken the steel. Now, besides wire wheeling this is one of my first carpenter's holdfast. This is some 3/4 mile steel. I'm going to wire wheel this, especially the top part and the body. But then I'm also, for the body, just so it's not exactly 3/4 of an inch, I'm going to just gently take this to the sander and remove just a little bit of material. That way, this will, you know, giggity. And this is a really heavy duty plant hanger. This is forged from some 1/2 inch. I gotta move the leaf over a little bit more so it's more in line, because the hole's gonna be drilled here. But this stuff, if I mount this to the wall, I could probably do a pull up on it. I'm not good at pull ups, but and if you guys are here from Instagram, I thank you guys so much. I know it's going to be boring, but the engagement helps. My YouTube channel's been growing, and I will soon be able to be monetized, which is nice, because I like to, any extra income will help, especially being able to spend more time making videos, making cool stuff, or eventually more funny stuff. Now when you're wire wheeling, especially if you're doing a lot of it, I recommend just wearing, like, you could just have a dust mask on, but I just got this respirator, because the forge scale, which is just high heat rust, I just crushed it in my hand. Pocket pen. It can be a very fine dust, so you want to make sure that you're safe, because metalworking is not the safest thing in the world, but you can find ways of making sure that you're safe. And I'm also going to be wearing a face shield, just because these wire wheels, this wire wheel is rated for this grinder, but the over time stuff just wears out, so you're going to want to. Jesse, we need to cook. Mr. White. Oh, also, for anyone what's watching, wire wheels or buffing wheels, these are actually one of the most dangerous tools in the shop. So, Master Blades with Jason Knight, he actually talked about in a video, I think like last year. Two separate accounts. A guy was polishing a knife with his buffing wheel, and another guy was polishing some titanium chopsticks, and both of them, the wheel grabbed their material and flung it back at them, and it stabbed them right in the chest, and they died. So anything spinning towards you can always grab it, bounce off a thing, and have it come back and stab you. So you got to be safe. What the fuck was that? Hello. So I realized over here I can't see shit. Right back, I gotta go get a light. I'll go to light. All right. Sometimes you can find these lights, like you can buy them at Home Depot. Sometimes you can cheap at markets. Oy. That's gonna be the way. Also, another thing with wire wheels, because they have grab stuff, especially anything like when you're trying to do with hooks, it'll grab it and fling it out of your hand. So you got to be really mindful, especially when it grabs a rough edge. It'll be able to really dig in, and I'll probably demonstrate. So you guys can see in here that it can grab stuff and fling it. Now it just flung it at the door, but just say if you had a buffing wheel and you're buffing a knife or something sharp, it could grab it, bounce it off of here, hit this back, and then fling, fly towards you. So that's why you got to be careful. But this is a hook before we wire wheeled. You can see how crusty it is, Mr. Krabs. Then this one, after we wild wheeled, it's a lot shinier. It has a much smoother finish that feels nice in the hand. Nothing feels uncomfortable, which means it won't cause any rubbing issues on your clothes or whatever you decide to hang up with this hook. So wire wheeling does a great job. And then you'll be able to just heat this back up. Now it doesn't fully, this wire wheel, this is only like a quarter horsepower or eighth horsepower grinder. So it doesn't have a ton of power. So it's not really removing the forge scale. You can kind of see, I gotta get a better angle. You can kind of see like the marks on it. It doesn't fully remove the forge scale, it just polishes it. So, but that forge scale, once you heat this thing back up and then you put it in the, I am going to use the mineral oil beeswax. Make sure you go check out my video on how to make a homemade paste wax. I will try to come up with like a good recipe, but you just heat your steel up. You don't have to get it cherry red. You just got to get it to the point where when you apply some of the beeswax to it, it's not burning, like it's not smoking like a burn. It's kind of like if someone like was smoking like a dab or something, where you have the steam of the wax coming off. Even though technically the beeswax and the mineral oil are food grade and technically kind of safe, you still don't want to be inhaling wax fumes. Those aren't the fun ones. In the future, after brimfield and other stuff, I'm probably gonna do a video on making a low speed tumbler, because gifting season is coming up and I want to be able to provide a bunch of cool stuff that's gonna last, because that's the thing. When you get into blacksmithing or any form of crafting of anything, you realize, you're gonna spend a lot of time and effort on it, but it's gonna be something that's gonna last. They're still digging up forged stuff from Pompeii that's 3,000 years old, and it's still preserved and able to be used, or it still exists. So Now, one of the things when you're wire wheeling, like especially me with not having a power wire wheel, it will polish things up and smooth stuff a little bit. But like this bottle opener, there's still I feel around here I got some sharp spots. So that's when you're just gonna have to use some sandpaper, just some like between 4 and 600 grit, maybe 800 grit sandpaper, and you just take your thumb and you take your sandpaper and you go over the edges and you just smooth it out to where it doesn't feel sharp to the touch. So that way, like right here, I got like quite a bit of a sharp edge. So like just grabbing that and squeezing a little bit feels sharp and uncomfortable. Like it's not gonna quite cut me, but it's like it's a hot spot. And you just like with making knives or handles for other stuff, you want to make sure that there aren't any hot spots. Whether it's a bottle opener that you're gonna be holding and using, or even with your hooks, especially your hooks, because these are going to be, people are going to put their jackets on it, clothes, towels, other stuff. So basically, you want to make sure that the stuff is actually smooth to the touch. It's okay if it has some slight hot spots. It just can't be something that's grabby and wants to, grab stuff and what do you mean paranormal shit? I already shit my pants like a ghost. You just don't smell it. I got I have both the Michael Myers mask and crappy costume, and I also have the and I got the no, not paint pubes, just meth. I wish. Um, I did my first nicotine today, but I also got my Jason Voorhees mask. Now you're good, man. I know. Some of you guys might be coming over from my Instagram, and I appreciate you guys. I am actually gonna be working on. I got some blade steel that I bought from Pop's Knife Supply. I'm gonna be forging after Brimfield. I'm gonna be forging Michael Myers kitchen knife and also Jason Voorhees machete. So because I'm 6'5" and I got boots that can make me 6'8" to be the Rob Zombie Michael Myers, I can do like a versus kind of thing. I'd have to have like the camera on the tripod so that way like I can edit it so that there's a split. I just shit my pants. Sorry. So I got this. Yeah, I'll probably make like a tiny knife. I might like. So this is just a prop knife. It's kind of dirty because it was a poop knife. No, I'm joking. It's not a poop knife. It just I had it in the shop and it got covered with stuff. But I'm gonna forge a full size. It's not gonna be this thin. It's gonna be like a beefier chef knife, but more on how I think Michael Myers should have a chef knife that's actually like more of a combat knife, like in terms of thickness, like it won't just snap because like real chef's knives, they're not meant for what they use it for. So if you give me a second, I'm gonna try to find the Michael Myers mask and I'll show you. And also, I don't know if you guys are on TikTok, but those like people in like VR chat dancing like me in front of the microwave or shit. I'm gonna recreate that. I'm gonna do it where I'll have the camera on the tripod and then you'll just see like, oh, I'm working on stuff. Give me a second, guys. I finally found the mask. Alright, I'm back. I gotta unplug you guys. I got you hooked up to an extension cable and a charger because I didn't charge my phone today when I was at work. So I don't got the boots on that make me Rob Zombie Michael Myers, because Rob Zombie Michael Myers, the actor, was like 6'7", 6'8". I'm 6'5". But I got the gotta turn the good camera around. So I gotta get this costume. I haven't worn this at all. Oh shit, I gotta plug this so I don't rip apart the cable. And I will be getting back to wire wheeling and stuff. I just gotta do that. Let's see if I can. So I'm gonna get the ambiance right. I haven't worn this mask in like a year. I'm just do a check to make sure it's not moldy. I hate the smell of latex mask. Also, the hair on this thing's kind of messy, so I'm gonna have to like carefully comb it and shit. So let's see Michael Myers. So I will be forging his knife. Now, give me a minute. I'm gonna change. Now, I don't have the boots that make me 6'8", but you'll see. So I'm gonna dress up as Jason now. Joe Biden. I think I get a better bald cap. But yeah, I'm gonna be working on that stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna be working on those. But I'm gonna go get my paints back on. We're gonna be getting back to wire wheel and stuff, getting stuff ready for tomorrow. All right, we're back. Thank you, Aiden, for being there. Yeah, I'm gonna be here live a little bit longer. I'm gonna do a bit more wire wheeling some stuff, and then I'm gonna film some Michael Myers, Jason TikTok stuff. Yeah, Aiden, I know you're allergic to latex. Luckily, I'm not, but the mash just smells nasty. Like, it's just strong latex smell. Yeah, I'm going to do some more in the morning, but you guys can see, here's the difference. So here's one of the hooks that isn't wire wheeled, and here's one that we just wire wheeled. You can see how shiny it is, but it's also smoother, and it'll feel better in the hand. Now some of these, like this is my already wire wheeled bucket. Some of these, like the bottle openers and the crosses, some of them have some sharp edges, so I'll just have to take some fine grit sandpaper, like between 400 and 800 grit, and just, lightly sand the corners. And those grits, they won't really add any scratch marks. And they, actually, while I'm here, I don't know is there anything left? We got the London Bear. Got to use one of my bottle openers to open the beer. So I'm going to put you guys on the tripod, mate. Fucking tripod. Put you guys on the fucking tripod, mate. Fucking... My wife can't call me a tripod because I get a small... Yeah, okay. Alright, one of the beer bottles I made. So all these are going to get heated up, and I got my homemade paste wax, blacksmith finish wax. It also works for cutting boards and stuff. Make sure you guys go check out that video on how to do it. You can get the ingredients pretty cheap off of Amazon. I haven't had the Sella toile in a while. I just don't like the paper on it. I know it's supposed to be fancy and stuff, but the paper got in the way, but the bottle opener works awesome. And I'll show you guys the difference between this one's not finished. This split cross is nowhere near finished, but you can see how kind of crusty it is. And this one is all nice and shiny. Not the best lighting, but you guys get the point. It's something that'll make a better finish, so when you actually heat this up, you don't have to get it cherry hot, you just have to get it like a dull gray heat. What time is it? It's almost 1. Well, thank you guys for watching. I gotta go to bed. I'm gonna be getting up early so I can work on finishing these things and forging some more stuff. So remember, guys, cheers, salute, be safe, have fun, and make something cool. Bye.